Hey, welcome into another episode of the Fat Guy Podcast. I am the Fat Guy. Most people just call me Brett Mason. A few people call me horrible names that I'll never say. We all have haters in life, right? This will be my 122-pound ketogenic diet, intermittent and extended fasting weight loss update. Want to remind you quickly that I'm not a doctor. I don't profess to be a doctor. I have no formal medical training. You should always consult with a doctor before you get any diet or weight loss program regimen. My only caveat to that would be if you have a doctor that's opposed to ketogenic diet or a low-carb diet or a protocol of intermittent fasting and healthy extended fasting, I'd highly recommend getting another doctor. Nevertheless, that's a decision you'll have to make. I can't make that decision for you. Follow me on all the social medias, won't you? Whether you prefer Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter, no matter which format you like the best, just add them. Just add me on all of them. It's Fat Guy Podcast. That's the username you're looking for. Fat Guy Podcast. I highly recommend Twitter because I share everything. Not Twitter. I'm sorry. I rarely use Twitter. I highly recommend Snapchat because I share everything that I eat on Snapchat. Most everything. Some days I miss a meal here and there. So if you want to see what a person that's lost 122 pounds eat, that's a good way to go. And I want to remind you that the best way to keep up with me on the podcast, because this is where by far I disseminate the best information, is on the podcast, because I have more time to get in depth, to get in detail. Oftentimes I'll break down the science, which I think helps people stick with a way of eating. If you understand the science behind why something works, I think you're much more inclined to actually do it, rather than just somebody saying, oh, you need to eat grapefruit, man. You're like, why? Well, I'll try it, And if you're not sure why it's working or if there's a scientific reason for it to work, you'll get frustrated. You'll think it's stupid. You won't want to put up with, whatever adversities may come along, whether that be hunger pangs or whatever. But I think if you understand the science and you know for 100% that you're doing the right thing, I think you're just more inclined to stick with it. So podcasts are good for that. So the easiest way to stay up to date with the podcast is to download the Spreaker app. For your tablet or smartphone or whatever. No matter what kind of phone or device you have, you can download it in your respective app store. Just search for the Spreaker app, Spreaker, Spreaker. And not only can you find this podcast by searching for Fat Guy Podcast once you download that app, there's thousands of other podcasts on there. So if you're into entertainment, maybe you have a niche that you're like, maybe you're into politics or sports or basket weaving, or there's probably a podcast out there for you. I love podcasts so much. I love listening. Mainly my form of entertainment is podcasts. I just love them, and the Spreaker app is a great way to open up the door to a huge variety of high quality and entertaining podcasts, and it's the best way to keep up with me on mine. So make sure you download that app, Spreaker. Of course, if you use the iTunes podcasting app, or you have a podcasting app on your Android device you already use, that's fine. I'm available there as well. Just search for Fat Guy Podcast. So it's not that big of a deal. So I'm going to start off, before I get into the particulars and the details about my weight loss and where I'm at with my fasting protocol and all of that. I want to just read a message that I got today. This is why I do what I do. This is why I share literally every moment of my life practically on social media. I share how fat I am. I share my frustrations. I share my successes, because I get messages like this one I got today from Tanya. Tanya wrote me on Facebook and said, hey, I'm down 25 pounds. Thank you for all your inspiration. I still have about 25 more to go, but it's progress. I never thought I could lose weight and still enjoy eating. Thank you so much. You're the best. I replied back to her, that's amazing. Your message made my day. Thank you for sharing with me. And she replied back, you're so welcome. I couldn't have done it without all your tips and videos. I promise you, nothing on planet Earth makes my day more than that. It means that the times when I don't feel like picking up my phone or microphone, whatever device I'm using to record a podcast, or what day I feel like God, I'm making the stupidest video, or There's a lot of days I don't make videos on Facebook, and I do a lot of videos. There's some days I don't do them. I would like to do them, or YouTube videos, because I don't feel like I look good. Like, I'm like, I should probably shave first. And I'm in too weird of a place to care about shaving, so I just don't do them. And podcast is a great outlet because it doesn't matter what you're looking like today. That's why I tend to do more podcasts more frequently. So I started an extended fast 4 days ago, and I haven't quite hit it, but I'm just coming up on the 4-day mark. And my goal is to do a minimum of a 14-day fast, but I was shooting for a 21-day fast. So my update on that is 2 parts. One, to let you know what has happened, and 2 is to let you know that I have decided to stop the 21-day fast. And it's not because of failure. It's not because I can't do it. Actually, I have no hunger today. I have zero hunger. I have a ton of energy. I feel great. It has nothing to do with that. It just has with me doing some research on what I think is the most long-term sustainable thing to do. And so I was thinking about it really with the 21-day fast, and that doesn't mean I won't go back and do one. I might. The main driving force behind me wanting to do a 21-day fast was to try to cure this rosacea, because I've tried everything. If you're not familiar with rosacea, you see people with red faces, look like their blood pressure's high all the time. Well, with some people that may be that, but with me and a lot of other people, something's called rosacea. And doctors don't know what causes it. They don't understand it. They have no cure for it. For some people, antibiotics will work. I tried that. It didn't work. For some people, creams will work. I tried that. It didn't work. There's a gel you can try. I tried that. It didn't work. So I read that a really long-term extended fast will work. So that was the main reason I wanted to do it. But of course, I'm still trying to lose weight. So, I have to weigh the pros and cons. I really feel like possibly if I get my weight to where it needs to be, I think it may help the rosacea. I'm not sure. So I'm just kind of torn on the process. But being how I know that rosacea is really just a thing that annoys me visually and my weight actually affects my health, I have to prioritize my weight loss journey higher than my fixing my rosacea journey. Although I do think the two are connected. And I do think rosacea is a sign of something gone wrong with your health. So back to how I made this decision to stop the 14 or 21 day fast. I've done a lot of research on extended fast, intermittent fast, or whatever. Now, keep in mind that pretty much since day one of starting a ketogenic diet, I've done intermittent fasting, where I would not eat for 16 hours, and then I would eat within an 8-hour window. So, for example, I might not start eating until noon, and then I would stop eating at 8 p.m., and then I wouldn't eat anymore until 16 hours had gone by, So noon the next day. And then I shrunk that down to a 6-hour window, then I shrunk it down to a 4. The longer you go, the easier it gets and the better you get at it. And I'd say over the past month or so, I've been doing a 23-hour in one. So for 23 hours, I don't eat, and then I eat everything I'm going to eat in one meal, or maybe a meal and a beefed up snack, all within an hour or maybe 90-minute window. And then I'm back to fasting again. So that's intermittent fasting. So I'm familiar with fasting, and it's been a huge tool in my weight loss success. There's all kinds of research to show that intermittent fasting really drives insulin levels down, which is what burns fat. If you want to burn fat, you got to get your insulin levels low. It's just that simple. So I did a 5-day extended fast about a month ago and felt amazing. I think I lost like 8 pounds. The first 2 or 3 days were really rough. The last 2 days were really easy, and the last day I just felt phenomenal. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try more extended fasts. But as I look long term at what's going to be sustainable for me, it makes sense to do something that I can continuously do. Does that make sense? Like doing a 14 or a 21 day fast after you end one of those, how long do you have to wait to do it again? Like, you can't do it 2 or 3 days later, I don't think, because I don't think you've had enough of a refeed. I don't think you've bolstered your body back up with nutrients and, convinced your body that you're not starving to death and done all the things you need to do to keep your metabolism high. I don't think you have. So, I don't know. I think I could potentially do a 21-day fast, maybe. Realistically, I think maybe every 2 to 3 months, maybe. I would still continue my intermittent fasting when I started back eating, so I would still be continuing a level of fasting. But as far as going long term, I just don't think you can do it that. And so I started thinking about that and how, that doesn't seem like I don't think I would want to do that the rest of my life. I don't think I would want to continue to do 14 or 21 day fasts. That being said, it could give me a huge jump start. It could help me drop a lot of weight here quickly and get me really much closer to my goal. So I'm really torn. Nevertheless, after doing a lot of research on fasting, consulting the written research that I've found on fasting at PubMed and some of the more prominent medical professionals that implement fasting, like Dr. Jason Fung, for example, and others. It seems to me that a short-term extended fast that's always done, you're always in the process of doing it. It seems to make a lot more sense. So, I think I've decided to fast 2 days and eat one. Fast 2 days and eat one. So it'll basically be, it'll be like 48 hours or something between eating. And I can eat a considerable amount of food on the day I do eat. And I think this is something I could do forever because I literally don't feel bad on the two days of not eating. It doesn't bother me at all. Now, if you're a carb eater, like if you haven't been keto a long time and you're not fat adapted, a 2-day fast is going to be hell for you because your body is going to go through all kind of carbohydrate withdrawal. If you're a big soda drinker or tea drinker where you're accustomed to having a lot of caffeine, you're going to go through enormous caffeine withdrawal. Those first 2-3 days are going to be hell for you. I avoid the caffeine. I'm not a high carb eater, so I just have to deal with minor to sometimes moderate hunger. Usually it's very minor and practically nothing. Like today, as I'm recording this, it's almost, almost 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I had one teeny tiny, almost imperceptible wave of hunger that lasted about 10 or 15 minutes a couple hours ago. It was so minimal I could barely even feel it. It was like this super gentle nudging, and then it went right away. So hunger just isn't an issue for me, especially for a couple of days. So you got to know where you're coming from. I'd highly recommend you go keto and get your body fat adapted before you begin extended fast. But you should definitely begin the intermittent fasting right away. Keto and intermittent fasting go hand in hand, and they're by far the most powerful 1-2 punch for weight loss of anything I've ever tried. Because you're constantly driving insulin down. You're not eating enough carbs to spike insulin very much when you do eat, and then you're going 18 or 20, 16, 18, 20 hours without eating, and that insulin just continues to nosedive into the low levels to where fat burning is allowed. So it's by far the most powerful 1-2 punch for losing weight of anything. And it's easy to do. There's an adjustment phase of you going keto. You're going to go through some carb withdrawal. Your body's going to shed a lot of water and electrolytes. If you're not careful, you'll get the keto flu, which is the feeling groggy, the feeling lethargic, the feeling run down, the headaches, But you can prevent that if you'll just keep your electrolytes up when you start a ketogenic diet. And I have other podcasts I've done about electrolytes, so I won't get into that too much here. But what I've learned is that weight loss is all about the insulin. So there's not just one way to do it. There's so many different tools that you can use to attack this high insulin level. So basically what we're doing is we're halting the cycle of we're halting this cycle of constantly elevated insulin, because that's what makes you fat. The standard American diet, and then you take the diet that people eat, which is already full of carbs. Everything you eat is carbs. That's what people in America eat, is carbs. Every meal is carb loaded. When you combine that with the times people eat, because they tell you, oh, breakfast is the most important meal of the day, then you got to eat lunch, then you got to eat dinner, and then you got to have 2 snacks in between. Every time you're eating, you're throwing your insulin levels through the roof. And in that over time, that causes insulin resistance. Your cells get sick of it, and they start resisting the insulin, which causes your body to push out more insulin, which causes you to be more resistant, which causes your body to push out more insulin, which causes you to be more resistant. And so your insulin levels are always through the roof. And when insulin levels are high, your body will not burn fat. Insulin is a hormone that does several things, but one of the roles of the insulin hormone is to tell your body to store fat. And so that's why you can't burn it. So always think of losing weight in terms of, how do I keep my insulin low? So fasting accomplishes that. The longer you fast, the lower your insulin will go. Intermittent fasting causes that. And a low-carb diet causes that, because you're not spiking insulin much to begin with. So you can use a combination of the three, keto, intermittent fasting, and extended fasting, and use them like a carpenter would use tools. Sometimes you can get by with a little hammer. Sometimes you need a sledgehammer. Mix it up. Keep your body always guessing, but always keep that insulin level low. This is what I've learned. And so in case you think I just fell off of a turnip truck somewhere, I don't know what I'm talking about. I started my weight loss journey in 2013 by taking a product, the pink drink product. And I had success with it for a while. By far was not a long-term solution. But it did get me to where I believed I could lose weight. It did get me to where I was eating less. It did get me to where I had some benefits of lower insulin, because that's part of the thing the pink drink, they actually invented the pink drink to help people with diabetes. And what's the diabetes problem? High sugar, high insulin. So it makes sense that it would work for some people. Now, that being said, they've changed the formula so many times since I tried it in 2013. I think it's probably garbage now. Even while I was taking it, they changed the formula and it stopped working. Please don't go buy the pink drink and say, oh, I listened, this guy lost 122 pounds and he said the pink drink was great. That's not what I'm saying at all. Save your money. Do not spend all that money on that stupid drink. Come on. Just lower your carbohydrates to 20 or less a day. Depending on your weight and height, you're going to eat somewhere between 70 and 120 grams of protein a day, and then to make the rest of it fat. The rest of what you eat should be fat. So I hope that's an update that makes sense. I always struggle with how much detail should I go in about what I'm doing on these podcasts. Should I just update you on what I'm doing, or should I always recap about the insulin and the insulin resistance and the metabolic syndrome? And I feel like if somebody's just joining my podcast today for the first time, I do think I should say enough about the insulin resistance to at least introduce you to the concept in case you've never heard it before. People are always asking me, what should I watch, or what should I read, or, what should I, what kind of information should I consume besides your podcast to help me understand? And I would say by far the most profound thing that I ever watched that helped me understand what made me fat was a video that I found on YouTube by Dr. Robert Lustig, and it was about sugar, and it was about what sugar does to you, and it's a pretty old video. It came out in like 2009 or something. But if you want to understand what made you fat, if you want to understand how you wound up being fat, because again, I go back to what I said at the beginning of this podcast. I believe that once you understand something and you know for a fact that physiologically, medically, metabolically, what you're doing is the right thing to do, I think you're much more likely to stick with it. Because people are always telling you things to do to lose weight. They never explain to you why you got fat. Like, you don't understand why you got fat. And look, I was there. I was one of those people that said I don't eat very much, and I didn't. And if you're a person that's fat and you don't think you eat very much, I feel you. And the truth of the matter is you're right. You don't eat that much. Now, you may eat a lot, but you don't eat that much in the grand scheme of things. It's what you're eating that's the problem. So go to YouTube and watch the video, Sugar, the Bitter Truth. That's the name of the YouTube video, Sugar, the Bitter Truth. It's by Dr. Robert Lustig. This is a guy who was treating childhood obesity and researching childhood obesity. And he discovered that children as young as 8, 10, 12 already had fatty liver disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. They already had insulin resistance. They already had metabolic syndrome. And some of them already had type 2 diabetes. He's like, holy crap, what is this all about? And he discovered that it was sugar. It's processed sugar and high consumption of carbohydrates. So he began this research on understanding the metabolic pathways of why this is making us fat. Especially because all these years, the medical industry and the health industry has told us that fat is what was making us fat. And surprise, surprise, that all turns out to be wrong. That's not at all what's making us fat. So, Sugar, the Bitter Truth, that's your reading. That's your homework assignment. Watch that on YouTube sometime. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Download the Spreaker app, Spreaker. Search for Fat Guy Podcast. Follow us, make us a favorite, and you'll never miss an episode, and that's the easiest way to catch up with the podcast. And, again, if you already consume podcasts using the standard app on your iPhone device or your Android device, that's fine. You can search for us on there and get us that way as well. I just find that a lot of people don't understand podcasts, and they want the easiest way to get us. And if that's you, the Spreaker app is by far the best way to do that. Add us on the social medias, Fat Guy Podcast, no matter if you prefer Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or Snapchat. I highly recommend Snapchat and Facebook. I use those the most. I'd say Instagram comes in a close third, and Twitter. I post stuff on Twitter, but I'm just not a huge Twitter fan. But if you are, you can add me on all those. Fat Guy Podcast. Have a great day. Thanks for listening. Share. You never know whose life you may change by sharing this podcast. And there is no greater feeling in the world than helping somebody to change their life. I know because I experience it frequently, like the message that I read you at the beginning of this podcast. Have a great day.